Reborn Under a Blood Moon. Book 1 of the Crimson Fang Chronicles. Chapter 2. The Wolf Den Smells Like Pine and Bad Decisions. Leanne had a theory that the universe operated on a system of escalating absurdity, and that once you crossed a certain threshold, say being murdered and waking up 5 years in the past in a ditch, it simply stopped pretending to be reasonable and committed fully to the bit. This theory was confirmed when she arrived at the Black Fang compound. She had expected something primitive, caves maybe, a clearing with a bonfire and some menacing totems, perhaps a skull or two mounted on a stick, for atmosphere. Everything she'd ever heard about the wolf packs from the Bai household had painted them as barely civilized savages who ate raw meat and settled disputes by biting each other, which, in retrospect, was exactly the kind of propaganda her stepmother would circulate to keep her from ever considering the packs as allies. The Black Fang compound was a sprawling network of timber and stone buildings nestled into the mountainside like they had grown there, connected by covered walkways strung with lanterns that cast warm amber light against the rain-washed wood. There were gardens, herb gardens, specifically, neatly labeled with little wooden markers. Someone had planted wisteria along the main gate, and it was blooming in defiant purple cascades, despite the fact that it was absolutely not the season for wisteria, which meant someone in this pack of allegedly uncivilized wolves was a talented enough gardener to bully a plant into flowering out of spite. Leon respected that deeply. "The healer's quarters are this way," Wren said, still carrying her, still shirtless under the open coat, still radiating enough body heat to make the cool night air irrelevant. His voice was clipped, professional. The voice of a man who was absolutely not affected by the fact that the woman in his arms had her face approximately 4 inches from his neck. Leanne, who was also absolutely not affected, stared determinedly at the wisteria. "I can walk," she said, for the 3rd time. "You passed out." I rested my eyes. While vertical. "Briefly." A wolf trotting beside them, gray-furred, smaller than the others, with an ear that flopped slightly to the left, made that laughing sound again. Leanne was going to find out who that wolf was, and she was going to remember this. They reached a building set slightly apart from the others, marked by a wooden sign that read "Healer" in bold characters, and underneath, in smaller, more aggressive handwriting, "If you are here because you did something stupid, the consultation fee is double." Wren kicked the door open with his foot, not aggressively, just efficiently, because his arms were occupied with Leanne, who had given up protesting and was conserving her energy for more important battles, like not noticing the way his arms tightened slightly every time she shifted. "Sable," he called into the warmth of the interior, "if this is about your shoulder again, I told you to stop punching trees." A woman emerged from behind a curtain of dried herbs, wiping her hands on an apron that had clearly seen things. She was short, devastatingly short, the kind of short that made you forget she was short because her presence filled a room like smoke, with silver-streaked hair pulled into a bun so tight it could have been classified as structural engineering, and eyes the color of strong tea that missed absolutely nothing. Those eyes landed on Leanne, then on Wren, then on the way Wren was holding Leanne, then back on Leanne. "Oh," said Sable, in a tone that contained entire novels. "Oh." "She's injured," Wren said quickly. Too quickly. "Left forearm. Possible concussion. She was in the rain, in the forest, in a silk dress." Sable's eyes had not left the point where Leanne's head rested against Wren's chest. "And you're carrying her." "She collapsed." "Mm-hmm." "She's human, Sable. She needs medical." "Put her on the cot, dear." The word dear was delivered with the precision of a sniper rifle. Wren's jaw tightened. He crossed the room in 3 strides and set Leanne down on a cot that was surprisingly comfortable, piled with wool blankets and a pillow that smelled like lavender. His hands lingered, just a moment, just at her shoulders, before he pulled back like he'd touched something hot. "Right," he said. "I'll be outside." "You'll be right there in that chair," Sable corrected, pointing to a wooden chair by the door without looking at it. I have questions, and you are historically terrible at answering them when you've had time to rehearse. Ren sat. He sat like a man who was the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories and could tear through a battalion of armed soldiers without breaking a sweat, and who was also completely and utterly outranked by a 5'2" healer with an apron and opinions. Leanne liked Sable immediately. This, Sable announced, examining Leanne's arm with gentle, expert fingers, is not a wolf wound. No, Leanne agreed. Not a blade wound either. The tearing pattern is consistent with impact trauma. A fall. Those tea-colored eyes lifted. A significant one. Yes. From a significant height. Yes. And you're not going to tell me how a human girl in a designer dress fell from a significant height into the middle of Black Fang territory. Leanne met her gaze. Not tonight. Sable studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded, once, and returned to the wound with a briskness that was somehow more comforting than any reassurance. Fair enough. I've been patching up wolves for 30 years. I know when someone's story needs time to breathe. She threaded a needle with the casual ease of someone who could do it in her sleep, and probably had. This will sting. It did. Leanne didn't flinch. From the chair by the door, she heard Ren shift. Just slightly, just enough to suggest he'd been watching and had physically restrained himself from, what? Coming over? Growling at the needle? The man had known her for less than an hour and was acting like her pain was a personal offense against him. Mate bond, her brain supplied clinically, documented in the old texts, creates a compulsive protective instinct in the alpha that intensifies with proximity. Shut up, she told her brain. So, Sable said conversationally, dabbing something herbal on the stitched wound that stung, then immediately didn't. You're his mate. The word fell into the room like a stone into still water. Ren in the chair went very still. Apparently, Leanne said. The first human mate in Black Fang history. I'm an overachiever. Sable's mouth twitched. She wrapped the arm in clean bandages with efficient movements, then sat back and looked at Leon properly, the kind of look that peeled back layers. You're not afraid, she observed. It wasn't a question. But Leanne answered anyway. I've recently had an experience that recalibrated my fear response. Must have been quite an experience. It was educational. From the chair, a sound. Low, involuntary. Not quite a laugh. Leon glanced over. Ren was watching her. Not with the predatory intensity from the forest, or rather, still with that, because she was beginning to suspect that was simply his face, but with something else underneath it. Something almost warm. He caught her looking, and his expression slammed shut like a door. You need rest, he said, in the tone of someone delivering a military briefing. Sable will prepare a room. In the morning, we'll discuss. He paused, frowned. We'll determine your situation. My situation, Leanne repeated. Your presence in Black Fang territory. Your status. You mean the part where the moon apparently decided we're soulmates? Ren's left eye twitched. Just barely. It was the most emotion she'd seen on his face since the coat had gone on, and she treasured it. The mate bond, he said, with the careful enunciation of a man defusing a bomb, is a complex spiritual and biological phenomenon that, Ren, Sable interrupted gently, requires careful consideration and, Ren. He stopped. She's exhausted, bleeding, and sitting in wet silk, Sable said. Give her a blanket and a cup of tea, not a dissertation. Something happened to Ren's face. It was fast, gone almost before Leanne could register it, but she caught it. The hard mask cracked just for an instant, and underneath was an expression she recognized because she'd spent years wearing it herself. I don't know what to do. Not about the territory, not about the pack. About her. About the girl in the ruined dress who'd shown up in his forest and made his world rearrange itself without his permission. He looked, for exactly 1.5 seconds, like a man who'd been handed something precious and was terrified of breaking it. Then the mask was back, jaw set, eyes sharp. Alpha. "Tea," he said. "Right." He stood up and left the room with the kind of determined stride that suggested he was going to brew the most aggressive cup of tea in werewolf history. Sable watched him go. Then she turned to Leanne with an expression of such poorly concealed delight that it bordered on indecent. "Oh, this is going to be wonderful," she said. The tea arrived in an absurdly large mug, a mug sized for hands that were, apparently, designed to also be paws, along with a bowl of soup, 2 bread rolls, a blanket, a second blanket, a pair of wool socks, and what appeared to be a hot water bottle wrapped in a cloth. Wren deposited all of this on the cot beside Leon with the same energy as a large dog dropping a tennis ball at someone's feet, and then pretending it hadn't. "The soup is venison," he said stiffly. Then, after a pause, "There's also a vegetable option, if that's—" He cleared his throat. "I didn't know your preference." "You brought both," Leon observed, because there were indeed 2 bowls. Standard protocol for guests. This was a lie. This was so obviously a lie that one of the wolves who'd been lingering in the hallway, the gray one with the floppy ear, let out a quiet, wheezing sound that was definitely not a sneeze, and definitely was suppressed laughter. Wren shot a look at the wolf that could have peeled paint. The wolf suddenly found the floor very interesting. "Thank you," Leon said, and took the vegetable soup. Something in his rigid posture eased, fractionally, like a cable under tension relaxing by exactly 1 millimeter. He stood there for a moment, clearly wanting to say something else, clearly having no idea what that something else was, and then nodded once, sharp, military, completely undermined by the fact that he'd brought her 2 kinds of soup and a hot water bottle, and walked out. The gray wolf in the hallway watched him go, then turned to Leon. It shifted. Where the wolf had been, a young man now stood, early 20s, lanky, with messy brown hair, and the floppy-eared energy of someone who had never once in his life been serious about anything. He had freckles, actual freckles. On a werewolf, Leon hadn't known that was possible. "Hi," he said, leaning against the doorframe with a grin that took up most of his face. "I'm Gian, Beta of Black Fang, and I just want you to know that I have never, in 12 years of knowing that man, seen him bring anyone soup." "Standard protocol for guests," Leon quoted. Gian's grin widened until it threatened to achieve orbit. "We don't have guest protocol, we're wolves. Our protocol for strangers is growl and see what happens." He jerked a thumb toward the direction Wren had vanished. He just ran to the kitchen himself, the alpha of Black Fang, personally assembled a soup tray. I watched him taste test the broth, Leon. He tasted the broth. "Please stop." He burned his tongue and pretended he didn't. "Please stop." "This is the best day of my life." Sable appeared behind Gian and swatted the back of his head with practiced ease. "Leave the girl alone. She's had a long night." "But Sable, he brought her 2 soups." "Out!" Gian retreated, still grinning, still radiating unholy glee. His voice floated back from the hallway. "Wait until the pack finds out. Song is going to lose her entire mind." A door closed. Silence. Sable sighed the sigh of a woman who had raised an entire pack of oversized children with teeth. "He's not wrong, unfortunately, about any of it." She adjusted the blankets around Leanne with the matter-of-fact tenderness of someone who healed things for a living and couldn't turn it off. "Wren is not what people think he is." "What do people think he is?" "Ruthless. Cold. The kind of alpha who'd rip out your throat for looking at him wrong." She paused. "He can do all of that, mind you. He's terrifyingly good at it. But—" She lowered her voice, conspiratorial. "Last spring, he found a fox kit with a broken leg in the eastern woods, carried it back in his coat, slept on the floor of this clinic for 4 days until it could walk again, told the pack he was conducting territory surveillance." Leon said nothing. Her hands tightened around the mug. "He names the clinic Cats," Sable continued, apparently committed to destroying Leon's emotional defenses. "All 7 of them. Pretends he doesn't. Gets very offended if anyone calls them by the wrong name. Why are you telling me this? Sable looked at her, steady, kind, unflinching. Because you've got the look of someone who's been hurt by people who were supposed to protect you, she said simply. And I want you to know that whatever the mate bond is or isn't, the man who carried you out of that forest is not one of those people. The room was quiet. The fire crackled. Somewhere outside, wolves were moving through the compound. Soft footsteps, low voices, the occasional bark of laughter. Leon took a sip of soup. It was good. It was really stupidly, unreasonably good. He taste-tested the broth. She put the bowl down, pressed her hands to her face, and let out a breath that had been building for 23 years in one life and approximately 4 hours in this one. She was not going to cry over soup. She was a woman with a revenge plan and a 5-year head start, and absolutely no time for feelings about a werewolf who brought her hot water bottles and named stray cats and burned his tongue, checking if the broth was good enough for a stranger covered in mud. She was not. She might have, a little. Into the blankets. Sable pretended not to notice. The hot water bottle was very warm. The room they gave her was small and clean and smelled like cedar. It had a window that looked out over the compound, and beyond it, the forest, vast and dark and silver-edged under the moon. A proper bed, not just a cot, with quilts that were heavy and soft and clearly handmade. A wash basin, a small wooden shelf with 3 books on it, a novel, a field guide to northern wildflowers, and, inexplicably, a cookbook. On the bed was a folded set of clothes. Simple. Linen shirt, loose trousers, wool overcoat. They were too big. They smelled like pine and wood smoke. They smelled like Wren. He gave me his own clothes. Leon held the shirt up. It would fall to her knees. This was the most impractical, transparent, secretly sweet thing anyone had done for her in— No. She stopped the thought, folded it up, put it away. She had work to do. She changed out of the ruined dress— goodbye, symbol of every lie the Bai family had ever dressed her in— and into Wren's clothes, which were warm and soft and fine. It was fine, it meant nothing. She sat on the bed. She pulled the quilt over her legs. She stared at the ceiling. And she planned. The Bai family's downfall had not happened overnight in her first life. It had been a slow, careful campaign of alliances and manipulation, orchestrated by her stepmother, Zhou Yifei, over years. Lian had been too naive, too trusting, too committed to being good to see it happening until it was too late. She wasn't good anymore. Or rather, she was still good. She was just done being nice about it. She ticked through the timeline in her head. If she was 18 again, then her father was still alive. Still the patriarch of the Bai family. Still, she thought with a familiar ache, under Zhou Yifei's influence, but not yet fully controlled. He wouldn't sign over the family assets for another 2 years. There was time. Mei was 18 too, already beautiful, already ambitious, but not yet connected to Feng Hao. That courtship wouldn't begin for another year. If Lian moved carefully, she could cut it off before it started. And the Bai family's business, the jade trade that had made them one of the wealthiest human clans in the territories, was about to enter a critical expansion phase. In her first life, Zhou Yifei had used that expansion to funnel money into shell accounts that eventually funded Lian's disinheritance. But the contracts hadn't been signed yet. The partners hadn't been secured. The web hadn't been woven. Lian knew every thread, every name, every date. All she needed was power, leverage, the kind of backing that would make even Zhou Yifei think twice before moving against her. She looked out the window at the Black Fang compound, glowing amber in the moonlight, at the wolves moving through the grounds, at the mountain rising behind it all, ancient and immovable, the most powerful pack in the Northern Territories, led by an alpha who had just declared her his mate, an alpha who brought her soup and named stray cats and looked at her like she'd rearranged the stars just by existing. This is strategic, she told herself firmly. An alliance with Black Fang would make me untouchable. This is about survival, about justice, about making sure May never pushes anyone off a railing ever again. This was all true. It was also true that the shirt smelled like pine, and she didn't want to take it off. Schedule, her brain screamed. Revenge. Focus. She pulled the quilt up to her chin, closed her eyes, and began to sleep for the first time in her new life. Downstairs, in the Alpha's study, Ren sat at his desk and stared at the wall. He had been staring at the wall for 27 minutes. The report he was supposed to be reading, border patrol movements, supply requisitions, a territorial dispute with the Silver Pine Pack that required diplomatic finesse, sat untouched on the desk. He'd read the first sentence 4 times. It said, "Quarterly perimeter assessment." He could not have told you this under oath. Mate. The word kept circling his skull like a hawk. He pressed his palms flat against the desk, breathed, in and out, the way his mother had taught him before she died, back when he was 8 years old and terrified of the power building inside him like a storm. Control. You are the Alpha. You are in control. A knock at the door. Unless you're on fire, Ren said. Go away. The door opened anyway, because it was Jian, and Jian had never once in his life respected a closed door. So, Jian said, dropping into the chair across from Ren with the boneless grace of a man who considered furniture a suggestion. You found your mate. I'm aware. In the rain. I was there. She's human. Thank you, Jian. I hadn't noticed. And she made fun of you, to your face, while you were doing the alpha intimidation thing. Jian was grinning. He was always grinning, the bastard. I think I love her already. Ren said nothing. His jaw worked. His fingers pressed harder against the desk. How are you doing? Jian asked. And underneath the grin, something shifted. Something real. Something that had been Ren's best friend and second in command since they were cubs chasing each other through these same woods. Honestly. The study was quiet. The fire popped. Outside, an owl called. She was bleeding, Ren said very quietly. And my first thought was not threat assessment or identify the source. My first thought was, he stopped. What? Ren's hands curled into fists on the desk. He looked at them like they belonged to someone else. I wanted to wrap my coat around her and bring her somewhere warm and make sure she never looked that cold again. His voice was flat, factual, the voice of a man reporting a structural failure. I have known this woman for less than 90 minutes. I tasted soup broth for her, Jian. I tasted soup broth. You did. I don't even like that soup. I know. I told the kitchen it was for a territorial dignitary. The kitchen knows we don't have any territorial dignitaries visiting. I'm aware. A silence. She's scared, Ren said. She's trying very hard not to show it, but she's scared. And not of us. His gaze shifted to the window, toward the wing where the guest rooms were. She's scared of something she hasn't told us about yet. And whoever made her that scared... Ugh! He stopped again, but this time his eyes flashed gold. Not the soft gold from the clearing, a deeper gold. The gold of an alpha whose fundamental wiring had just identified someone who had hurt his mate and whose entire evolutionary heritage was now oriented around a single, primal directive. Jian recognized that look. He'd seen it before. In battle, in defense of the pack, in the moments when Ren stopped being the careful, controlled leader he'd trained himself to be and became what he was underneath, something vast and ancient and very, very patient. Whoever it is, Jian said carefully, we'll deal with it. Yes, Ren said. We will. He picked up the Border Patrol report, put it down, picked it up again, put it down. Jen. Yeah? Do we have extra blankets? The guest rooms run cold. Jian pressed his lips together very hard. I'll check. And the window in that room sticks. Send someone to fix it in the morning. Sure. And... Ren cut himself off, closed his eyes, pressed his fingers against the bridge of his nose. I'm doing it again, aren't I? Little bit. This is a strategic situation that requires careful analysis and measured response. Absolutely. I am not going to go check if her window is drafty. Of course not. That would be irrational. Completely. A pause. The east wing does get cold at night, Ren muttered. Good night, Ren. Jian left. He made it all the way to the end of the hallway before he doubled over with silent laughter, tears streaming down his face, one hand braced against the wall. 12 years. 12 years of watching Ren, his best friend, his alpha, the most terrifyingly competent leader the Black Fang Pack had seen in 3 generations, maintain perfect emotional control through wars, betrayals, assassination attempts, and the time Jian accidentally set the armory on fire. Undone by a girl in a muddy dress who said context clues to his face. He was going to tell everyone. In the guest room, Lian slept. She dreamed of falling, but this time, someone caught her. She dreamed of fire, but this time, it was warm. And she dreamed of golden eyes watching her through the dark, steady and bright and impossibly gentle, and a voice that said, very softly, as if afraid the words would break if spoken too loudly, I've got you! In the study below, the alpha of Black Fang fixed his mate's drafty window at 2 a.m. by himself, in the dark, in complete silence, and told absolutely no one. Jian found out anyway. He always did. End of chapter 2.